Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Gina Aloe. I'm president of the Austin Recruiters Network. We're a regional community of the National Recruiters Network. The Austin Recruiters is an organization for talent acquisition and HR professionals to come together to facilitate training, share industry best practices, and peer networking. In our D&I webinar series today, we will be discussing how to build a successful veteran recruiting program that guarantees hires. We have a great lineup of speakers today that will provide us a toolkit for how to source, attract, and retain military talent. We like this webinar to be interactive, and we encourage you to post your questions in the Q&A or chat section. I would like to introduce our event moderator, Linden Kueck. Linden is the Director of Operations for the Operation Level Up program at Galvanize. Linden, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thanks so much, Gina, and thanks to the Recruiters Network for putting together this event. It's exciting to be here. So yes, I am the Director of Operations for a specialized program at Galvanize that offers a full stack web development course to active duty soldiers at Fort Hood. We're starting to expand to other installations, starting with Fort Wainwright in Alaska, but all of our work is giving students, transitioning soldiers, opportunities to transition into careers in tech as they exit the military. So the topic of this panel is very near and dear to my heart. As Gina has said, diversity and inclusion is a hot topic in recruiting right now. As we've seen in our student body at Galvanize, because the military itself recruits from a really diverse pool of talent, building out a military recruiting program is an important part of building a more diverse workforce. So the goal of this webinar is going to be to provide you with best practices and a toolkit for maintaining, building, and expanding on a military talent program. So whether you're just getting started or looking to expand something within your organization, our panelists are here to debunk some of the myths about military talent and just share their expertise around the challenges of military recruitment efforts, how to build a business case for a military talent program, how to start, maintain, and evaluate a military talent program, and how to attract quality candidates. We'll kick things off by letting each of our panelists introduce ourselves. So Jason Alcorn, if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Very, very excited to be here. My name is Jason Alcorn. I've been in the recruiting industry for a little over 8 years now, and I've been supporting hiring for Whole Foods now for the past 4 years. And I've really touched on really pretty much the entire organization as far as the different areas that I support recruiting for. Prior to that, I was in various healthcare recruiting industries. So that's kind of me. We are early on in our journey in building out a military program. So we've got maybe a few learnings that we can share with you today, but also hoping to learn a little bit ourselves here too.
All right, Jessica, if you'll go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Bell, and I am a career consultant for United Training Academy. I specialize in helping veterans transition in general. At United Training Academy, we have a focus of the IT and project management arena. I spent about 8 years in the Fort Hood area where I grew my passion and my expertise on also helping people understand how to leverage LinkedIn. And so I teach for a lot of people on base on as they exit the military on how to start leveraging LinkedIn. Thank you, guys.
All right, Kelly, if you'll introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. My name is Kelly Bogey, and I lead our global talent acquisition team for Whole Foods Market. Jason being one of my recruiters, and we support our non-tech areas like marketing, merchandising, logistics, and quite a few more. I've been in recruiting industry for 10 plus years with a background in campus and diversity recruitment, in public accounting, obviously more recently retail, and helping with both store recruiting and now our corporate office. Both of my grandfathers were in the military, Navy, and Army, and I'm really passionate about supporting these candidate pools and finding them great opportunities in our organization. So I look forward to, as Jason mentioned, talking a little bit about our journey and where we are and our learnings, and hearing from these wonderful, wonderful panelists we have. So thank you so much for including us.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Lex, if you'll introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Lex Brown. Hopefully everybody can hear me. My audio is good. All right, awesome. Again, I'm Lex. I'm from Qualled, VP of Operations and Business Development. I also manage our recruiting and candidate success efforts. I'm also a veteran of the Air Force, 7 years active duty, 2 years in the National Guard. Very happy to be here. You know, and what we do at Qualled, by the way, is we train veterans and place them with companies in tech sales, so inside sales, outside sales, customer success, sales engineering, so on and so forth.
All right, thank you. Over to you, Lou.
Sure. Thanks. Lou Candiello. I'm not in Texas. I'm up here in Massachusetts, but in my role, I lead the military recruiting and military spouse recruiting strategy for Dell Technologies. So we're about, I think, last count, 160,000 employees worldwide. I myself am a veteran. I served in the Marine Corps from 86 to 92. Got out as a E4. Some of you may know what that means. If not, by the end of this, hopefully you will. It's kind of funny that such a low-ranking person has the responsibility of the end-to-end strategy for a corporate Fortune 20-something company. But I've been at this for probably about 9 years or so. A lot of relationships at the national level, as well as directly in Texas as well, to help kind of build an undertapped talent pool as we look at it. Folks that have the experiences that your businesses are looking for that can have a true business impact while feeling good at the same time. So happy to be on the panel, share what I can with folks, and kind of get this going. So looking forward to it.
All right, so that is our panel. What we'd like to start with actually is a poll question so that our panelists can get to know the audience, the makeup of who's here, and just kind of like where your needs are. So we'll start with the question of, does your organization have a dedicated veteran recruiting program today? So go ahead and pull up the poll, throw in your answers, and then we'll dive in on the conversation. Okay, awesome. It looks like the majority here are in the beginning stages of this, and then a larger majority have not yet established such a program or are in discussion around it. So that's a good starting point for us. So what I'd like to start with is asking our panelists about how companies can attract and retain veterans and military talent, and what are some of the things that differ in marketing to military and other talent pools. So Kelly, if you'll start us out, talk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So I think that when we decided on establishing our military ambassador program as our title here at Whole Foods, we really started out with understanding, who are our current veterans that work for Whole Foods. So we pulled some reporting, we pulled together a group, almost like a focus group of our current veteran talent and also active military. And we talked to them and did this focus group to align on what attracted them to Whole Foods. What was it about our organization from a marketing, branding, core value standpoint they really resonated with? And we really found it came down to our core values. So if you look at Whole Foods, everything from our store all the way up to our corporate office, we're very team-based. So we looked at, okay, this connotation of team really resonates with this type of talent and these candidates. And then also we looked at partnerships with external organizations. So I know Jason can probably touch on this a little bit further, but we partnered with Centurion Military Alliance to really learn what are other organizations doing in this space and what makes them successful. So we're really trying to partner with our current ambassadors to learn what attracted them here and really tell those stories when it comes to things like our job descriptions, making sure they're giving feedback, also connecting with them to share their stories on social media. So that way any active military or veteran candidates can see this on Instagram and can see why these particular individuals chose Whole Foods to really see if they connect with that story. So I'd say for us, it's a combination of leveraging our great ambassadors that we have at the global office currently and soliciting their feedback, and also some really great external partnerships that we've built over time.
Yeah, excellent. And if I can maybe add a couple pieces there, right? So it really, we're in the early stages of telling our internal team member stories, right? So we, obviously, like Kelly said, started engaging with them first, but we're recording their stories. We're having them tell their stories in written form as well. We're going to share those, like Kelly said, on our social media. We're going to share them with candidates during their candidate journey with our organization as well, to attract and retain that talent. And we mentioned leveraging some external partnerships. We've made some from this panel here as well, but one that we started off with was Centurion Military Alliance, whose sole focus is really helping transitioning military members, right? And so a lot of it is an education process for us as well, to understand how to read the resumes, what sorts of skill sets they'll be bringing to our organization, where they might fit in best, and understanding how to engage with them in the right way, right? And so so we've started that so far, right? We're also going to be participating in upcoming events, and sourcing events, and recruiting events there as well. So one thing that I've started with Centurion Military Alliance as well, I think Jessica mentioned this during her intro, but they do basically webinars or meetups where they're going through kind of LinkedIn best practices, and it's very practical as far as just actually sitting down with them and building out their LinkedIn page and making it look attractive. We're also do mock interviewing and resume writing during those sessions as well. So we're partnering in that way. And then still just continuing the education on our end, right? So we're going to lean on our internal team members to continue to educate our recruitment team, who needs to level up our education there, how to interview, how to read resumes, but also educate our hiring leaders in what a military member, military vet is going to be bringing to their team potentially. So that's kind of high level. A couple highlights for us. Lex, did you have anything?
Yeah, we'd love to jump in here. I think the key here is collaboration, especially if you're at the starting blocks of establishing a program within your company. You can get with programs and companies like Qualled and many others, including some of the other panelists here, because we have a very strong community of veterans that makes it a lot more streamlined for you to speak to those type of veterans that you're targeting, that you're hoping to add to your pipeline. Because we vet them, we give them assessments, we take them through a very strenuous process of interviewing and board selection, right? And then we train them in the field that we are focused in. And so by the time you get in contact with someone like a Qualled or again, other partners, we have sort of eased that transition for you. So collaboration is key. We also do co-branding and co-marketing, especially if you say make a hire from our program. At that point, what attracts a veteran even more is seeing other veterans win, right? So every time we get on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or sit reps to steer codes, whatever it may be, they're seeing, oh, another veteran just got placed in this role. Let me learn a little bit more about that. So, those things really do build momentum for companies who collaborate with us. And that's why I think that's very critical.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it sounds like a big piece of this is partnering with organizations kind of like in this space and involved in supporting servicemen and women. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what are some of the recommended local and national organizations that recruiting and human resources teams should partner with in their military recruitment efforts. Jessica?
Yeah, great question. First, starting off with people hire people, right? And so creating that network with a wide touch to meet various needs is a great way to get embedded with the veteran network. I would start with establishing relationships within the transitioning sectors of different military branches. For example, USO Pathfinders, Army Transition Assistant Programs, Texas Veterans Commission, Hire Heroes, and honestly, the list goes on. veterans respond to those who understand veterans. And so one way to do this is use your LinkedIn. And here's a really fun fact. All people preparing to exit out of the military are prompted to build out a profile on LinkedIn. And then they get a link for the premium package of LinkedIn for free for that year. And so they're taught to align and convert their MOS to that targeted occupation that they're looking for. This gives you a pipeline of open to work skilled veterans in your network. I also pick a veteran organization and make it a yearly tradition to join forces and volunteer. In return, you can get some PR, of course, and get team building in that, which is probably embedded in your organization on a yearly basis as well. Also, post veteran-friendly posts and celebrate your hires on your LinkedIn page. Going back to some things that some people just said, when a veteran notices that another veteran is getting an interview or that they have validation that they're working in that organization, that takes away the myth of, do they really hire veterans? Are they really pro-veterans, or is there some kind of trade-off there and there's a high turnover? And veterans will tie in that it's a good place to go when they see that there's other people there. Texas is a huge retirement military community, some other states as well, and understanding what those benefits that they value versus a civilian that hasn't been in the military, those are completely different benefit packages, right? And so being able to understand that and target and talk on those things is going to help ensure that you are getting those veterans in to meet those employment needs. The last thing I would say is it's easy to get involved, but follow-up is a must. And dropping the ball on anything in the veteran network could go very badly for that organization.
Yeah, that's an important note. You know, a big part of this is that military community and kind of leveraging these things that exist. Yeah, we'd like to ask another poll question of the audience. So what are some of the recruitment strategies that have been successful for your veteran recruiting? So for those of you who have an existing program or are getting started on this, what are some things that have really worked for your team as we start to dive in more to some of those best practices? Okay, so jumping off of what Jessica was saying, it looks like networking on LinkedIn is really a huge and valuable resource in your toolkit, and also partnering with veteran-focused transitioning orgs. So that's all a big piece of this puzzle, and hiring our heroes is definitely an important part of that. Well, yeah, to jump from there, you know, as you are thinking about or working towards creating a veteran recruiting program, you know, there are lots of barriers that organizations can face in building out those pipelines. So what are some of those barriers, and what are some of the best practices for training recruiters and hiring managers on assessing talent? Kelly, can you talk us through that?
Sure, absolutely. So I think as with any recruitment program or strategy, you're really trying to start with what are our overall goals or pillars. So with any program, we really took a step back, Jason and I and our teams, to look at what is our end goal. So let's establish our baseline. How many current veterans or active military do we have at our global office right now? What is our end goal, and how do we want to get there? So with our ambassador program, we built out specific pillars focusing on our overall goals, whether it's candidate engagement or education across the business. So I think, as with any program, it's starting with that foundation, right? And having those goals outlined, and also your timelines and milestones. Really for us, the education piece, we're leaning heavily on our current ambassadors. So we're really talking to our current team members at Global in this space to understand, like, what were some of their challenges they faced during onboarding, when they were going through the recruitment and interview process, what were things that they wished that they knew? So again, it's just asking those questions to understand where are we at now and really help drive that to where we want to be in the end finish line. I think for us, from an education standpoint, it's everything from, really looking at how to review resumes. So I think, Lou, you shared that too, and understanding the leveling within the military. So we're really trying to bring that and surface that to not only our recruitment team, but also our hiring leaders. And we're doing so actually in partnership with our ambassadors. So ultimately this year, we're planning to have them help us host lunch and learns across the business for not only hiring leaders, but any team member who's interested in hearing these things to understand, hey, if I have someone that's new to my team and they're a veteran, like just so I can understand where they came from and be a successful peer to them. So I think for us, it's leveraging our current pool. And then of course, Centurion has done some training with us as well. Also, I think to, the point, Jessica, on talking about benefits, what are the benefits that really resonate with our candidates if they're active military or veterans, and how can we speak to those in a way that, we're really relaying the need to know and helping to answer any questions that they have. So I think those are a few ways that we've kind of combat some of the barriers that we've had. And I think also having an executive sponsor or someone to really champion this at a high level in your organization is important. So we have a VP of our distribution centers who's actually a veteran. And so she's been involved in all of our calls and conversations and in upcoming lunch and learn. So I think all of those things have really helped us as we stand up this program.
Yeah, I think those are most of our early barriers, right? The education piece can't be understated. I think there's a lot more education that we need to conduct on our team. So it's exciting that we're going through that process now, but training the business in those translatable skills and reading the resumes, right? That's going to go a long way in assessing that talent and what is right for their teams, and really what they're bringing to the table, which resonates, like Kelly mentioned earlier, a lot with our core values and our leadership principles. So just leadership across the board, right? I think vets are bringing that to the table, the work ethic, the just get it done mentality, right? Which happens to actually be part of our leadership principles as well. And so all of those things resonate. We need to help the business learn that as well, and maybe dispel some myths or I think Lou might be talking about this maybe later, but I think there's maybe a sort of idea like, hey, they military vets fit into a couple different types of profiles within an organization, and so the education piece will help to begin to dispel maybe some of those myths and say, hey, they can really be of value in a lot of different areas. And then, yeah, just to reiterate, I think just establishing kind of the baseline of where we're at. There were, challenges there, I guess, of just kind of getting the reports right, getting our numbers right. How many do we have in place? Who wants to be engaged in the process? And then, how many more do we want to see, I guess, increased application traffic and then increase hires towards the end of the year, right? So just having those internal conversations and establishing those, baselines. So.
Well, and I'd imagine that in addition to kind of like educating the team about how to interact with veterans, part of it is educating them about the benefits of bringing veteran populations onto the team. What are some of the things that you have both noticed in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think I touched on it a little bit. We're super early on here, right? But really, it's going to be, I think, showing the leadership, the work ethic that's going to be brought to their team, and how that correlates to our leadership principles that we have established and our core values that we have established. Those are hugely important to our organization, and it's how the company really positions itself and makes decisions about our future state, right? And so if we can continue our education process, again, we're early on there, but aligning a lot of those core values and leadership principles with the vet talent that we're seeing come into the organization, I think that's going to be one of the biggest impacts for us.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, I think one of the things for Whole Foods Market, being in the retail industry, adaptability is really important.
Oh, man.
So just across the board for any of our positions, we have a really fast-paced environment. Also being able to operate in the gray a little bit and also just make decisions pretty quickly. So for us, active military and veteran talent, I mean, of the most adaptable types of candidates, right? We talked to Shantae, for example, with Centurion, has been a nurse and has been in logistics, right? So quick learners, able to really get in and understand quickly and, you know, really get to the mission or whatever the objective is at hand. So I think for us, this talent is really just aligned to what we're looking for as across the business for being adaptable, flexible in this type of fast-paced environment that we have with retail.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so we want to transition into digging in on some of the myths that are out there and some of the things that people kind of get wrong about military talent. But before that, we have a poll question that's going to sort of like test your own knowledge about veterans. So on average, how many service members transition out of the military every year? I know this was something that I found really surprising when I learned about it. All right, so we'll turn over to Lou to talk about some of the different myths and also give us the answer to this question.
Thank you. If I could find the poll. Well, the answer is 200,000. So whoever got 200,000, gold star. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, about some of those myths and disinformation that kind of sits out there in the veteran space. You know, what it comes down to, a lot of it's been spoken to already, but it's the education piece. So right now, I hear feedback from recruiters and managers about the education levels of veterans, that it's probably, they're not well educated. But once you start to understand the facts that more veterans actually have some college experience with no degree than the general US civilian population, it's kind of interesting. And that when it comes to associate's degrees, veterans actually outweigh the civilian population by a good 4 or 5 percentage points. And then the same goes for those that possess bachelor's degree and advanced degrees. They're on similar paths. So veterans possess about 18.6% of them have a bachelor's degree, and civilians have about 19.9%. So the talent and the skill level when it comes to education is on par, if not a little bit better, in the military pool than it is in the general civilian population. So that's one thing we hear quite a bit. The other one is that military is not diverse. It's not a diverse talent pool to reach into. A lot of folks have the assumption that, yeah, it's very male dominated, right? For sure. There's not less gender representation in the military. But when it comes to underrepresented folks, Hispanic or African American, there's actually a higher percentage of African Americans that choose to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces than, again, civilian populations, about 4 percentage points higher. But what I like about this conversation that we're having today is everyone's pointing out the one thing, and what we're here for today is that training and awareness piece. As recruiters, right, we always have to get smarter about the talent that we're going after. It's just who we are. If we want to be successful in the space, we have to get knowledged up on it. Particularly in the technology industry, that changes so rapidly. You have to kind of be aware of those acronyms of that next thing that's coming out: 5G, cloud, hyperconverged, Kubernetes, all that fun stuff. But that's where we do a good job, as well as, it sounds like Whole Foods, as well as reaching into who you already have on your team as team members and pulling in that authentic translation of skills, understanding what is salient to themselves as veterans that they want to hear from recruiters, and kind of building that training profile together. But I also look at it as I use the analogy of a bridge, right? So there are resources that the service members go through, transition assistance program that Jessica talked about, building that bridge to figure out what they want to do in their civilian careers. But it's also the responsibility of employers to understand how we meet them in the middle of that bridge and offer them opportunities to come across and find careers within our companies. So one free resource I do like to share with the recruiters and hiring managers in Dell Technologies, free, mind you, is a website called psycharmor.com. And what it really does is it breaks down in a video format, 5 to 6 minutes each, the military culture, Veterans 101. My favorite is there's a videos out there called 15 Things Veterans Want You to Know. So they're literally telling you what you want to hear and what you want to understand. Another one I've shared with folks quite often, particularly in building the business case of why we want to hire veterans, is through the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. And it's a 4-page white paper called The Business Case of Hiring a Veteran, going beyond the cliches. A lot of us, probably I assume everyone on this call, feels good about wanting to hire veterans, but if you push that aside and just say, look at the business impact that they have just based on their competencies, that's the true I guess, benefit of hiring veterans, is that they're going to have a business impact much more quickly than perhaps someone coming straight out of college. They have different life experiences that those going straight into college may not have achieved. So that's a great way of putting it. And it goes beyond the one for one, right? So, oh, I did finance in the military, I want to do finance in the corporate sector. That's not always the case. If you think of all the folks that serve in the infantry, where are they going to find jobs? So a lot of that relies on competencies that they learn, resiliency, teamwork, goal orientation, working in diverse, adverse environments, all things that we look for. So that's another one. But then on the veteran side, right, there's the Transition Assistance Program, and how do they get smarter? They only get smarter if they really are involved and engaged in the Transition Assistance Program while they're going through it. In a time, I know when I went through the Marine Corps, a lot of it was considered a pencil whip exercise that you just kind of check some boxes and got the heck out of there and went back home to wherever home was. So it really depends on what that service member puts into it as to what they're going to get out of it. And many are taught by civilians that don't, I mean, as you were, civilians that have never held a civilian career. So sometimes the advice is the best they can get out of the situation that they're in. So the recommendation I make as well to service members and veterans, there's two. One is an organization called 4Block. 4Block is a career readiness program that really partners some of these veterans with employers such as ourselves, and gives them a 12-week curriculum to actually better understand what corporate positions look like behind those 4 walls, and then gives them a chance to network intentionally with company sponsors such as Dell Technologies. And it's free for both the company sponsors and for the veterans themselves. And then lastly, we mentioned it in here somewhere as well, is veteran mentoring. There's programs out there designed to help a person transition through how to write that resume that's not for a government job, but in the civilian sector. So there's American Corporate Partners is a good one. Veterate is a good one. Candiello also partners with USO Pathfinders. I think Jessica had mentioned that earlier. Those are all great, rich resources for them to go out to, and understand best how to present themselves, because another last challenge that veterans have is they don't know necessarily how to take credit for the work that they've done. There's a lot of teamwork, a lot of we in what they talk about. So how they kind of break that cycle and self-brand themselves, or how they start to take credit for, these are all foreign concepts for most veterans to say, I did this. It's much more of a team environment. So trying to help them get past that as well to be successful in the interview, because you know that they'll have the competencies and skill sets to kind of knock it out of the park for your organization. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really rich set of resources. And just to let everyone know, we'll be sending all of these resources out to you guys after the panel so that you've got them to work from. Jumping off of that, you know, as Lou kind of just described, right, the picture of kind of educational experiences amongst veterans is more complex than I think a lot of people realize. But it is the case that sometimes veterans don't have traditional education backgrounds, or that those things don't kind of like look the same as other resumes and other candidates. But they may have critical skills either from their service or from their broader careers. So I'm curious to hear from you all, how can teams assess veteran talent for diversity and inclusion processes and really understand their skill sets? Jessica, I would love to hear from you.
Another great question. And again, these aren't really easy answers. There's not a one boot fits all in these, but in a perfect world, the veterans would have been set up for success before they even got out the gate. And there is some responsibility that needs to be taken on each side. Some things that you could do is, one, we have the occupational demand list with the onetonline.org. And if you go in and select the crosswalk, this will be a great place that you could add the military branch and the occupational code or the MOS, and you get a breakdown of the civilian suitable matches. Keeping in mind additional skills, degrees, certifications might be involved in that. And so we don't just want to go off of the conversion of their MOS. I also suggest Googling how to read a DD 214 if you really want to dig in. And keep in mind that veteran is always much more than their MOS. For example, I know veterans that are not 25 Bravos, which is in the IT sector, but they've been playing the role for the last 4 years. So they're leaving out with additional skill sets. And so having those conversations at times might be beneficial. So they are more than just their assigned occupation at times. When considering jobs after military, veterans often evaluate the what of the company, meaning the people, the products, the work style, and also the why, which is really important for them, which is a purpose and a vision. Veterans are accustomed to aligning their personal values. And I know that sounds different for a lot of civilians, but their personal values, their beliefs, their ethics, their goals is all the mission at hand. And the veteran finds it challenging to identify companies that align to their business goals and processes that they find to be of value. Veterans also are looking for people, work, and processes that are familiar. When a veteran job candidate sees a fellow soldier on a brochure or a job interview, this is an instant identifier of service, shared service. And that then gives them the understanding that this might be a good place for them. This is not only reassuring, but confirming of the company's claims to hire veterans. When tasks, systems, and programs and outlines and terms and language is familiar, it creates an ease of confidence that the veteran's ability to be able to do the job. So they use different terminologies on one side of the fence that we use on the other side, but there's a bridge. We were talking about building those bridges, and I think it's important to be able to understand what skill sets they have or what softwares that they were using that's similar to make them feel comfortable. Veterans are not built to fail. That whole, especially Lou over there, failure is not an option, right? In the mix of it, we all fail our whole life, and that's how we become experts at anything. But they will not feel good about going into a position if they feel like they're going to be set up for failure. And also understanding what a retired veteran looks like. I noticed that a lot of times they'll say, well, you're too overqualified. Do you think that maybe veterans just spent 20 years in the military and they do want to continue to work and bring value, but maybe they're not looking for that high-end stressful position and taking away the understanding that they're already bringing home 40, 50, 60, $70,000 a year on their retirement. So they might not be that hungry person that's looking to make all those lateral moves. They're looking to go in, clock in, bring value, and most certainly they are looking to clock out, which is something that a lot of them have not experienced in their last 20 years. That's it.
Yeah, Lou, do you have anything to add to that in terms of how you can kind of assess veteran skills and figure out?
Thank you. It's a tough one. There is no one size fits all, right? About 80% of the roles in the military align to civilian careers, but again, not everybody wants to do the same thing in the civilian career that they did in the military, right? My joke is, I type in my MOS from the Marine Corps, and I put it into our skills translator on our Dell career page that we spend a lot of money on, and there's no jobs for me here. There's just literally nothing matches. It's like, oh, okay. So there's that. There's limitations to every magic silver bullet that we have out there. And then the other piece is that what Jess was just talking about, if they're been 20, 25 years in and they're receiving retirement pay, they don't feel that they always need to go for the extra mile. I'm talking to a lieutenant colonel these days that, he's saying the same sorts of things. He wants a work-life balance so he can spend time with his children that are in high school. So he values himself after 20, 25 years of experience, he's only looking for like $60,000. And that, when it comes across our desk, doesn't look well for that individual, because you would never hire someone with 25 years of experience at $60,000, at least not in our field. So we have to help them understand really truly what their value is, and helping them understand what their potential is within the company and the type of impact that they can have, because every story is different. And it takes a little bit of extra time to prep them, to get them ready, to get them into the mindset of what this career could mean, and how they could kind of dovetail their previous experiences into what the offering is. So it's a little bit longer, but in the end, the results are much more impactful, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great toolkit. Building on that, are there other kind of like signifiers? So we've talked a little bit about MOS and about how to understand kind of like what it means for someone to be a retiree. But what about signifiers like rank, years of service? Are there other things that recruiters can be looking at and trying to kind of parse as they understand their veteran talent pools?
Yeah, I can go again. So the piece in the very basic concept is understanding the difference between enlisted and officer candidates, right? So enlisted, like myself, I went to school for a particular profession, which happened to be aircraft firefighting and rescue, right? So put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, they told us every single day. But I became proficient on becoming a firefighter, and that's what I did day in, day out. And the same goes for all the other opportunities around, like, whether it's infantry, whether it's, IT networking, cybersecurity, HR, finance, operations, procurement, supply chain. You become very much expertise in those fields of what you're performing day in, day out. Officers are different, right? Officers have a 4-year college degree already, may have come through a service academy like a West Point or Annapolis or whatnot. Different credentials. They're not as probably hands-on in some of the deeper technical components of a specific role, but they do have probably other general benefits around leadership and program management and project management, and really getting the goals accomplished at the end of the day. So there's a necessary need to understand the difference. And we won't even talk about chief warrant officers, because those are completely different on top of all that as well. But understanding how that plays in, how they get paid, how a person, what type of salary they receive based on their rank and how long they've been in the military. Do they get extra pay because they have hazardous duty? You think of the folks that have to dispose of bombs, that pays extra in the military, right? Because that's not a normal job. So understanding how they're set up, where they're located, even, military provides a cost of living adjustment depending on where you're stationed and military installation you're attached to. How many children you have might influence the type of salary that you get as well. Basic housing allowance. These are all things that factor in that service members don't necessarily pay attention to when they have to start to translate that into a, tell me about your salary expectation conversation. So these are all things that need to have awareness, but again, coming back to the pure value of what the role is and not undermining that, making sure that they're getting paid equitably for their experiences.
Yeah. Jessica, is there any other kind of like signifiers or toolkits that you want to add to that?
Going back to what Lex was talking about, for example, as an IT training company, and a lot of recruiters, when they call, they ask, hey, how much would it cost to get my hands in the pots? And an ethical school is not going to charge to place our students once they've completed our programs. And you can have direct relationships with the career services directors. For example, with us, we have a whole department that's all focused around career services, just like Lex was talking about. And we go through this full scale of resume writing, leveraging LinkedIn, proper job search strategy, acing the interview. And so while partnering up with these people, you get these pools of talent that have already been pre-vetted. And when you have a relationship with that department, I would say, hey, Lex, what are you looking for? What exactly are we looking for? And I'm over here test driving the car. So I know what the car looks like, right? I know what the veteran looks like. I know what his potential looks like. I know what certifications he's projected to get and if he's actually going to get them. because as a school, we're not going to really attach our name to somebody 100% to put into a role with Lex if it's going to ruin that relationship for our future students that we want to get seated in there. And so having those relationships with these different entities is endless. There's endless schools, right, all over. And understanding that veterans are going to transition, and I mean relocate, for the right tax break, for the right quality of life in that area, for the right schools, for their kids possibly. And so just keeping all those elements in mind, and always having the relationships so that when you do have, oh, we need to fit 20 people next week, it's not that you're really scrambling. You're just reaching out to, you're 3 clicks away and 3 emails away from saying, hey, this is our needs. And schools like me are just happy to fulfill them, because at the end of the day, it builds our reputation. It means that we cared from the beginning all the way to the end.
Yeah, that really rings true for me too at Galvanize. We really put a lot of emphasis on that support. So that's good to hear. Well, that kind of wraps up our panel questions for today. But before we jump into Q&A with the audience, I do want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to share anything else that you want people to know about veteran recruitment efforts. And we'll just go in alphabetical order. We'll start with you, Jason.
Oh gosh, put me on the spot here, man. Yeah, I was trying to think of something to come up for this. Yeah, it's probably going to be easy for everyone else to answer because they're well versed in this area where we're still early on in our journey. I would just say, man, I don't know. I would just say that these efforts are worth it, and they're valuable, right? So if you're on the fence about starting a program, diving into this head first, it's a little intimidating, not gonna lie, at first, for myself included, right? But it's worth it. It's valuable. It will help your organization in the long run. So yeah, I would say, I guess, go for it if you're on the fence about starting a program or supporting military hiring. That's all I got.
I guess I might be next. I would say, just from the frustration of the veterans' perspective, I would say if recruiters could just stop leaving veterans high and dry when they decide that they're not going to be a good fit. And this could be, here's your solution: create an amazing spiel and put it in an email, so that you send it out to 20 different people a year, a week, something that's just a soft touch on why they weren't a good fit. Just giving them something so they're not sitting here thinking, oh yeah, I applied for the job 2 months ago, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it, because I can guarantee you that that's what they're thinking on that other end. That would be my best advice, is to just always follow through, whether that's in an autopilot email or you do have the time to make those connections, and then have community partners that you could hand those people off to. For example, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, you're just not a good fit right now. Maybe you should reach out to Jessica Bell and get the Security Plus to meet the 8570 DOD. That would take you about a month. Let me hand you off to that person. Have a pool of people that are willing. They're like, hey, I'm right here. I'll take them. I teach a leveraging LinkedIn class every 2 weeks. I'm able to put those people in that class, give them some pointers, and then they might appreciate you so much that when they are aligned, they're loyal to come back to you and say, hey, I've done X, Y, and Z. Now, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think another tip that I would add, I know that everyone on this call probably leverages different ATS, right? And so some of us may have access to things like CRMs where we can build candidate pools, or you might have just an Excel tracker to track any veterans or active military you're talking to. But I think to Jessica's point, it's important to have that constant communication and check in. So for us, we're leveraging Phenom, which is a tool that we have to build out candidate pools so we can send emails incorporating some of the storytelling from our current ambassadors of, why they want to join and these types of roles, why they might be interesting, and sending those out on a regular cadence. So those are things that we're looking to build out. But I think that communication element in tracking, just like you do any other target candidates, your campus recruitment, where you're keeping a list of your students you're really trying to win over. It should be the same approach to this type of candidate pool as well. So just to tag on there to your point, Jessica.
I guess it's on me. You know, I guess my final words on this is, if you're willing to take risks on recent college graduates, you should absolutely be willing to take risks on hiring veterans. And I know that's bias coming from me as a veteran, but also working in this space. You know, the reasons why there's so many proven outcomes that are mostly positive for companies that do take the risk on veterans. And if cost is an issue that you're making assumptions around, for instance, sometimes you might think you can pay a college graduate, a recent graduate, less than you might be able to pay a veteran. Well, I beg to differ, and I would say if a veteran can align with your mission and there's a clear path forward and upward, they may be open to taking, you know, a bit of a pay cut as they make that transition, taking a more junior role to learn. And while you're at it, you're not only getting someone who you can mold now, you're also getting someone who's bringing life experience. They can help build your team. They can help, you know, add leadership qualities and things of that nature. So there's so much intangible that comes with hiring a veteran. And I think, again, if you can take the risk on college graduates, please definitely increase the efforts to go after veterans in the space.
I guess I'm next. So for me, it's been interesting. So I've been with Dell Technologies a little over 16 years now, right? So when I first started in technical recruiting, I came into a company that I had 100 recs on my plate that I had to go fill for technical support. And I was fast and furious. I was pulling them in and slapping them in, and HR's problem if there's something after the start date, right? So with veterans, I kind of approach much differently. It's understanding that it's a process and not an event, so that it's going to take more time for that person to probably become acclimated into your culture and your environment. So they need different and more supports when they come in through the door. You know, we have our own employee assistance program designed specifically for veterans. We offer pay differential if they choose to continue service in the Guard or the reserves, right? So if they get called up to active duty, showing that we take care of them. We have a veterans ERG that offers mentoring programs as well. So it's not an event where you kind of kick them through the door and say, HR, it's your problem to deal with after that. I'm moving on to the next. It's much more understanding the individual and what that person will need to be successful inside your company, and those sorts of supports and resources that are available around that person. So that's, I'll get off my soapbox, but that's what I would say.
Thank you. Gina has been monitoring our chat and Q&A. Gina, any questions for our panelists?
Thank you to our panelists today. This was really rich content. I know I've learned a lot. And as Linden mentioned earlier, we will be sending out a toolkit at the end later this week. So a lot of the resources we mentioned today, you'll have at your fingertips. So a couple questions. One, again, around just, you know, what has been a good best practice to train your managers to translate military skills into roles that align. I know Kelly and Jason, you talked a lot about really leveraging your veteran population at Whole Foods. I know many companies have employee resource groups as well that can really help bridge that gap. Anything else, Lou? I know you've been doing this a while. Anything specific at Dell as far as specific training or maybe, you know, job families you focus on when you're first kicking off a veteran recruiting program?
Yeah, I can jump in. So when I first started this 9 years ago, I thought it was, who wouldn't want to hire a veteran? This is just the best thing in the world. Like, and I went everywhere trying to find talent and push it in front of the faces of of the hiring managers, and it was absolutely the wrong thing to do. So I got a little bit smarter in understanding what are the programs that we already have in place. So, you know, some folks have talked about college recruiting. So we have leadership development programs within global services, within finance, within business operations, manufacturing. So why don't I just broaden that aperture and include inside those programs veteran candidates for consideration as well? So, and it's a softer landing spot for those veterans to come into. So it's a much more framed out opportunity for them to actually transition in more smoothly, get educational assets, and kind of build their career more intentionally. So building off of what you already have is a big one. And then back to some of that, I still hold office hours for recruiters and still train on the very basics and fundamentals of what I kind of shared a little bit earlier today. So that never goes away. And then I also leverage, a lot of other folks have mentioned, our Veterans Employees Resource Group. I see them as my extended wing of talent acquisition. So we're a pretty big company, so we have veterans across North America that can go on base for me, whenever that might be, to go back and be the representation of Dell technology and our culture. And they can speak the language. They know the jargon, the culture, and they can speak to the career opportunities that we have. So a couple of things I do.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the panel on this particular topic of ways to help train hiring managers?
I was just going to say that veterans hire veterans and veterans trust veterans. And so putting those people in place is endless great results. But what I can tell, and I don't make up statistics, I try not to make up statistics, right? But just based off of my own center in Killeen, I made it a best practice to hire my students after they completed the program. And I could tell you that I had never once in 10 years had a turnover of my veterans that I handpicked out of my programs. So there was no retraining, filling those wonderful shoes. You know, they just stuck with us even through the COVID and things like that. So I'm very pro hiring veterans, and you can always guarantee that they'll be 15 minutes early.
I would like to jump in if possible on this as well, helping to train managers, if you don't mind. So my input on this is, you know, having been a hiring manager in many different forms, right? Teaching managers to zoom out a little bit as they're assessing candidates. And what I mean by that is, you know, some people read a job description or a rec and, you know, or just like on LinkedIn, right? If you post a job, if you have premium, you can look at some of the keywords, and out of the 10 keywords, you might have 2 checks for as if you're a candidate, but you might actually be a perfect match for that job. You just don't have all the keywords written into your resume. So I think it takes a certain competence level or experience level to look at a veteran's resume or look at any candidate really and say, okay, well, all the keywords aren't exactly aligned, and maybe they didn't do this exact job already per se, but I see the potential, I see the capabilities, so on and so forth. So I think there's a training, you know, I don't know how to exactly, you know, articulate it right now, but the point is just to zoom out and have that potential view too, on top of the specifics that you're looking for when you look at recs.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone. That concludes our first D&I webinar from the Austin Recruiters Network. So again, thank you so much to all of our great panelists today for the information you provided. Linden, thank you so much for moderating the event. Very successful. So if you're interested, we will be continuing more D&I series through the Austin Recruiters Network. And once things get a little more cleaner with COVID, we will be having in-person events as well. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, follow us on LinkedIn or check out our website at atxrecruiters.com. Thanks, everyone.